And every time I look at a scene or work with anyone, I'm like, what is important and what is parenthetical? What is maybe bold or italicized, and then what is just thrown away? Because in life we have sides, we mumble, we don't. Everything's not precious.
Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We're about to dive into another incredible conversation, so get ready for that. But before we do, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who is leaving a review and really just tuning into the podcast and letting the podcast encourage you and move your journey forward in a positive way. And those of you that are leaving reviews, I just want you to know I really do appreciate it. I love reading them. And with that, I'm going to shout somebody out right now. Mr. Eric Cross 974. Well, it's actually 90,074. All right. It says, I appreciate and enjoy this podcast on so many levels, including seeing others that I know and recognize, discovering new fellow community members in the Atlanta market, and also it is recognizing that my own growth in my pursuit in this work industry on both sides of the camera. So thank you for providing this amazing podcast and sharing your energy with the community. Eric, you are very welcome. And we're about to do that again right now. Some of you may recognize. If you don't, you're about to, and you're going to get to know him pretty well. Everyone, casting director, Clifton Guterman. What's up, Clifton?
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here today. How are you feeling? You ready?
I'm good. It's an honor to be here.
Oh,
I love what you do for our community, and I think the education and the advocacy and just the insight that you give to all of us is huge.
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
I knew that when I met you, and now it's great to be sitting across from you talking about what we love.
I appreciate that. Yes, we do. We do love it very much, and I like your, I guess, career, if you want to say, like, but more of your journey in doing a lot of different things, because I think that's so important for all of us. And before we dive into all of that, I'd love to know maybe like a behind the scenes story of you kind of getting started, whether it be in theater, or I know you started your casting, film and TV journey with Big Picture Casting. Like, is there a fun story you could share with us to really start us strong?
Yeah, I mean, I have been performing since I was a little boy. In church and school and community theater. And it was always sort of my way of escaping a little small town life where all the other boys around me were hunters or fishers, including my brothers and my cousins. And I was not those things. And I luckily came from a family that let me express myself in all of these really artistic ways. So storytelling has been a huge part of my life. And the journey went from high school and first being pre-med at Emory to transferring to UGA drama and then going to SCAD for my MFA. But what really kicked off a side love of casting alongside acting that I'd done my whole life was in my final year of my MFA at SCAD, we had to do a field internship. And we had to go find one in the world. And I knew I wanted to move to Atlanta. So I went knocking at Jody Feldman's door, the casting director of the Alliance Theater. And I said, you don't know me, but can we hang out or meet? And could I possibly have a summer internship with you? And she said yes. And we met and we hit it off. And that summer internship turned into a 5-year job at the Alliance Theater as the artistic assistant to her and Susan Booth, who's now the artistic director at the Goodman in Chicago. And so that is when, being alongside them for 5 years, that is when I really got the casting bug and realized that, oh, this thing that I thought was going to be my one thing for my whole life, acting, which I still love, do very little of anymore. There's this other thing that is equal and right there parallel alongside it. And that is watching others do amazing work and be somehow involved in helping them get it. And that to me was when I got the bug and when I realized, like, oh, there are many things I want to do, but it always comes back around to being around actors somehow and
Right.
watching them do their thing.
You know what I love about that is that it's well, one, that you were open to say, like, it doesn't have to be this one thing. Like, me being an actor is like the only way for me to find happiness. Like, being open that you can find happiness in other things and in many things, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're never going to act again or anything like that, but the next part of it is that, and I think this is maybe the most important thing, is that if you can attach yourself to other people's wins in some way, I think you're like so much better off.
Yeah, there's not now that I'm in TV and film. I've seen actors, on stage for years in roles that I helped them get. But now that I can go sit in a theater or watch on my home, watch somebody do a performance that I had an involvement with, getting them there, the amount of pride and joy is immense. And it's particularly when it's an Atlanta actor who, is in a major role and telling a wonderful story and showing their chops. I get very emotional about that. Just watching and saying, wow, because of the massive numbers of people that live here now and the numbers of people we see for any project that get down to who gets asked to tape and then who gets sent on to the client and then who maybe gets the call back. And, the math is daunting.
Yeah.
So when I see anyone that I advocated for get all the way to my screen, I will tear up.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge accomplishment.
If you're an actor, great news, because our virtual actor summit is coming up quickly. It is going to be September 6th, 7th, and 8th. And early bird pricing is right now, but I'm also going to throw in a $15 promo because you are listening to this podcast. If you're an actor that's wanting really solid strategy and tactics to move your career forward, then this event is going to be for you. Just imagine a 3-day virtual event that's completely immersive, meaning there's going to be participation with different instructors. You're going to be actually working on auditions. You're going to be able to meet other community members here in the Southeast and industry pros that can help give you the knowledge and wisdom to move your career forward. So if this sounds like something that you think would be beneficial to you, head to the link in the description right now. Don't forget to use that $15 off promo code, and I can't wait to see you at our virtual actor summit coming up. Well, you know what's also so fantastic about that, and you allowing yourself to be that vulnerable and connected to it, which I think is really special, is, and I'll tell this to actors, that sometimes they get in their head about like, I got to get off social media. I'm seeing all these other people booking and I'm not booking, and, it's making them feel bad. And I agree, like maybe get off of it, or you can also, like, if that's a friend, like really truly be happy for them, and I feel like that's what you're doing on this casting side. It's a little bit different, obviously, but even if you have an incredible career as an actor, book over 100 things, like it's just 100 celebrations. That's like not that many. Like, but if I'm friends with 10 actors that have booked 100 things, my celebrations just turned into over 1,000. And so it's like you get to do that in the casting side of things, really truly being happy for them and being part of that journey and being so excited. And I think that's special.
Yeah, and here, anytime any one of it, when you book or people I know and really love book, and it's just great for all of us. When we get these larger opportunities and prove ourselves, it just raises the entire community up.
Yeah.
Because it just shows, oh yeah, there are people that live, and we've known this. I've known this for a long time, and I've spent 22 years doing this and have cast a lot of things. And I have long said, when I moved to New York and moved back, I would have conversations in other markets where I'm like, there are people there who are world class. Don't, sort of dig on Atlanta because we didn't choose to live here or there. There are people there that are as talented as people anywhere in the world. I truly think that. And I know it because I've seen it over and over again.
Absolutely.
So when you or my good friend Bethany Mendenhall, when people like that book, great work, and we see the skill and the storytelling ability, it's good for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I found, having lived in other places, and in an ultra competitive sort of acting community of New York, which was cutthroat and a lot of psychological warfare, actor to actor in waiting rooms.
Yeah,
I was
totally.
shocked. I was shocked when
Yeah.
I moved there after living here. The games that
Oh
were
my
played.
God, it's insanely different. And anyone that moves from LA, New York, they're like, what? Like they almost think it's a trick.
Yeah. Why are you so nice to me? And why are you excited that I booked it? You went up for it too. Shouldn't you be mad? Like, and maybe you are on the inside. Maybe we're all disappointed when things don't work out. But I have always found this community to be supportive
Yeah.
and warm.
It's wild. I remember when I booked American Reunion and I was here for 9 weeks, but I came from Florida. So like I didn't really know anybody here. And on American Reunion, Chuck Hittinger was one of my co-stars. And he was from LA. And I remember just being like, all right, cool. Like Chuck's going to be my buddy, you know? And shout out to Chuck if he happens to be watching, because he was fantastic. But I do remember, and I thought this was so weird. We were together one time and he's like, he was like suspicious of me. He was like, why are you being so nice? Like, why do you want to, like, what are you up to? And he was like honest about it. And I was like, what? And at that time I was like so naive. Like I had no idea. I'm like, what do you mean? Let's just hang out and like have fun.
Yeah. Isn't it weird that there are people, people live in communities that are used to playing those games and that game playing is part of it?
Right.
Yeah, I do love that about the city.
It's incredible. The entire Southeast, how we, not that, you don't want it,
Sure.
but there's a little bit more of like well, you got this one and I have some faith I'm going to get the next one.
It's the
So I'm
same
still
with the
going to be happy
multiple
for you.
casting offices that are here now that were, 2 to 3 in the past, in the
Yeah.
early days, and now there are many. And acting studios and training, there were almost none at the top of, the explosion of TV and film here. And now there are all kinds of options for people can choose. And I think the more the merrier. And I think people should always train and continue to not get stale, but go where they feel they fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about those of us who teach or cast or have all these other hats, that we know that, and we want the other people around town. Like, go train with Jesse. See what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it feels good, you keep doing it. If it doesn't feel good, try something else.
Yeah, go somewhere else.
I think it really comes down to, it's not necessarily like a location thing. I think the biggest part of it is having the abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Because if I'm worried, like, well, someone's training at that other place and I really want them to train at Get Seen, it's like my mindset is there's not enough.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe I'm not enough. And so it's like you want to have that abundance mindset of like, hey, that might be great for you. I encourage you and I welcome that for you. And I know that there's enough for me. And so with that, when it comes to where people train or where people are casting or what people are booking, and those types of opportunities too, is like you want to shift that scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Within your casting, like you said, you started really with Alliance. What's like one of the biggest things with theater casting to film and TV casting, other than I think everybody knows like bigger,
the size
right?
of
Yeah. What would...
Yeah, and I do not love the terms like big and small.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I think it's not helpful to any of us. I don't, and also when I teach or coach, I don't like good or bad. When I've worked with you or when I talk to actors, I love talking in terms of opportunities and successes and I always have said when asked, I get asked this a lot, and I did theater and had to transition myself when I started doing TV and film, and it took a good 6 months for me to sort of really settle in and see a lot of tapes and get feedback from TV and film casting directors when I had done stage for a long time. But to me, theater is pushing a playwright's words or a musical, a lyricist's words out to an audience of 50 or 5,000 with one's whole being. And I think that's expressive and expansive, and it's using every bit of you. And I think TV and film work is compressed and concise, and it's communicating an inner life across a lens to all those people in the dark that you will never see, and you're not breathing the same air with them. And so I think the acting work that we teach, those of us who teach, is still the same. It's objectives and obstacles and actions and relationships and moment befores and all those things. I think the work is still the same, the detective work and the figuring out of what how to create that character and tell that story. It then becomes, yes, about pacing and volume and use of whole body or not and size. Yeah, and I think some actors can cross over really well and can do all have can take all of that technique and that detective work that they've learned to do in theater and minimize all of that physically and vocally when they get in front of a camera, and then others just don't make that leap or even want to try. I'll never forget. I tell this story sometimes. When I was living in New York, I saw a lot on Broadway because I worked in a Broadway press office. I had 3
Oh my
part-time
gosh,
jobs.
that's awesome.
So I got to see a lot of free theater.
That's
and a lot of
great.
press nights and opening nights. And other press offices would trade with ours. And I just saw a lot for free, which is golden because it's so
Incredible.
expensive. So I remember there was a play on Broadway when I lived there called 3 Days of Rain, and it was a 3-character play, and it was Paul Rudd, Bradley Cooper, and Julia Roberts.
Jeez.
I know.
Oh my God.
And it's a 2-act play, and in 1 act they're in like one generation, and they're 3 friends, and it's kind of a love triangle. And the next act, it's 20 or 30 years before, or there's a big time jump, so they have to play themselves at different decades. And Bradley, as you know, and Paul started out in theater and did Broadway. I mean, did a lot of theater before they ever became household names. Julia went straight to just being a TV and film actress, and an amazing one. And I love her, and I think she is phenomenal. They, in that 2,000-seat Broadway house, acted circles around her and she disappeared, which was really strange to see because she had done TV and film. And they were able to push that work to the 2,000-seat house. And she seemed small, and there was not that megawatt stardom that radiates from
The close-up. That's exactly what I was, yeah.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. And critics said the same thing. And yet, and yet we see they can give great, Paul and Bradley have given amazing on-camera performances too. So they do go back and forth. So it's just an interesting adjustment of internalizing the work and compressing it, and volume and physicality.
Wow, yeah. And you were talking about like not speaking of things like good or bad. I always like to think of it as like stronger and weaker. Like that could maybe, we can maybe come up with a stronger choice here. You know what I mean? As opposed to that was bad.
Right.
It's like it's art, so no matter what you do is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great, but kind of a detriment sometimes at the same time when you're like wanting to like book things. But going back to your story about about Julia Roberts there, what was it that seemed like she was small for someone that's like, maybe doing some film and TV, wanting to maybe do some theater. They did theater in the past. Maybe they're missing it. They want to get back to it, and they want to like really make sure to bring it. Like, what do you think was like the biggest?
Yeah, I think it's like a combat. Like, theater actors get so used to sort of timing and size of movement and how to share what's happening on their face and in their body past 10 feet. And I'm sure if we had been on the very, very front row or on a stage in a seat 2 feet from Julia, it would have been mesmerizing. And it probably was mesmerizing to her co-stars.
Right, yeah.
But it just, even, 10 feet back, and I remember having a great seat, I couldn't see much happening, and it felt very flat.
Wow.
And it felt very vocally a lot of the same. Yeah, I think you'll find in a lot of theater there is permission and room, and sometimes it's the writing, but also just for more musicality in the voice, more, variety of pacing. And so, they just had done it their
it's
whole
utilizing
lives.
your instrument
Totally.
a little bit better. And if when you're thinking about film and TV, the camera, even the microphone, right? All of it can be turned up. We can go in closer. So it's so much more subtle, right? So it's not Because I agree. I don't want to say bigger,
No.
right? It's like utilizing the instrument more specifically.
Yeah, and you don't have to you don't have to do as much because you are mic'd and your hand's not in the frame or whatever. But, on a stage in a house of 2,000 seats, those actors have to realize, like, is this gesture a centimeter gesture or is it a foot? Do
Yeah.
I need to hold for laughs? Do I need is there a beat here that they're obviously going to it's a shocking beat, or this is getting laughs during previews. I have to calibrate the performance so that they hear my next line. I have to write out the laughter or the applause for musicals.
And I think, like you said, even the pacing too, because almost similarly to auditioning, like you want to make sure the pacing is good in auditioning. But if the pacing is not perfect in the film, like they'll just edit it to be perfect,
Sure. Right.
But
There
on
are no
stage,
do-overs
right?
Once places have been called.
Yeah. I always think of it as like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like once the roller coaster begins, you can't midway get off.
No.
You
And that's
got
what
to do
I
that thing to
love.
the end.
I think in a lot of directors, in all mediums, love about theater actors is the fearlessness and the knowledge that, like, yeah, I've carried whole shows on my shoulders and nobody can call cut. And if, Jesse over there jumps a page, I have to help him fix it.
Right.
No one can say, hold, please.
Wait, Jesse messed up. Hold on. Yeah.
And throw Jesse under the bus or wave the stage manager down and say, stop. And so there is a sort of fearlessness that comes from having done a lot of theater, because you prep and you get it all ready and you get the director fine tunes it, and then you're on your own, you and your cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to switch gears a little, just to continue on this like casting train a little bit, talking about the difference between theater, film, and TV. You even, I know when you were with Big Picture, did some like VO projects of pilots and features and things like that, which was always so fun to audition for. But this is totally selfishly, but I'm sure everyone else will want to know too. Like how can you stand out in the VO world when it comes to, because I think like every actor, I mean, I guess I can't speak for every actor, but would like love to be in some sort of like animation type of, because there's just such legendary shows and it seems like the most fun work.
And there's so many great things out there.
Yeah. So how do you stand out when you were casting and you were listening? Yeah. What was it?
Yeah, first of all, I had never done it before. And so it was a big shift for me in the way even the auditions happen. And yeah, I cast 3 feature animated films for Fox Bento Box Entertainment that streamed on Tubi. But these were adult themed film, not like Triple X, but like they were not cartoons for kids and they were not written for kids. They were adult storylines. And so interestingly, I think on all of those, the direction for actors was to keep it grounded and please don't go cartoony or think of this as, yes, they will be animated. And some of them we had art to share in advance, just like, here's what your character looks like. Some not, which helps, I think. But I think the notes on all of those films were to be grounded and not overly caricature-y. But it is what we're not looking at headshots. We're not looking at anybody physically moving in space. It's audio. And one of the first things that hit me that I didn't know, because I'd never put out sides for animation, was that animated auditions are really the actor just reading your own lines and skipping through and not reading with a reader or even hearing that other dialogue, which was a shock to me because I was like, wait, we're just going to hear Jesse read the 6 lines in this scene that are his, even though there's 6 other lines interspersed in there.
Yeah.
How's that going to work? I never did it. And I think I would find really hard to sort of like, how do you connect the dots and tell that story when there's no reader with you? So it was weird for one to get tapes in that were or put out sides with an instruction saying, just read your lines.
Would you ever try to play 2 at the same time? So you'd have the scene?
No, I didn't do that. But, it was fascinating and I think on all 3 of those features, all the teams, and they were different writer-directors, but the same producing team, were not interested in looking at headshots because they didn't want to be biased.
Oh, wow.
They did if someone had a VO reel, wanted to hear other work and range, but they didn't want to get in their head some physicality of someone before they listened, which I think is interesting. And I didn't. And unlike unlike EcoCast that we put out for TV and film, where actors are self-submitting, and I see that headshot right there because it's your profile that you've uploaded it to. All of those, I accepted like the voiceover tapes manually and uploaded them myself with an avatar of a human, like no faces.
Oh,
So
wow.
I might know someone from the community,
Right.
but I was literally playing tapes without a visual, and I found it fascinating. And so, yeah, what stood out for me, and I think the teams, were still those fundamentals of storytelling, of just like someone has taken this page and their lines and they've created an arc, and they've told it had a beginning and a middle end. And then also, I think the ones that were successful to me were the people who were still, even though you weren't watching it and there was no one speaking with them, you could tell they were actively doing something to somebody else in that scene. There was action. They were flirting, or they were bullying, or they were, shaming. And you don't have to name what it is, but something's happening.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then, it sort of would be a balance of, there would be some tapes that would be incredibly flat and very, very just sort of, one note. And I found that the teams were attracted to those that had dynamics and levels. But sometimes also, depending on the size of the role and how many, and some of those roles said two lines, and they were done, right? That was it. It was more than about a timbre, a tone of someone's voice, a raspiness of someone's voice, a pitch of someone's natural voice. The age, does that person really, several of those films that I cast that we're talking about had children characters. And in a couple we cast actual children, and then in another they didn't want children for numbers of reasons. They wanted actors who could sound like children.
Right.
And so then it was just like, I don't believe that person is 12. I do believe that person. And so it's just really technical. It's just like the sound of someone's voice, the natural rasp, or the natural, does someone upspeak, does someone downspeak? Yeah. And then, occasionally if someone was close or on the fence, or some team members loved them and others were not sure, we'd go back for a retape with notes and say, take out the sensuality, and this one not so sexual or flirty, or come hither, yeah.
I know me personally, at least, and I'm sure other people might feel this way as well. I feel like the competition has to be so incredibly great for VO, because you can get recordings and tapes from anywhere
All over
in
the
the
country.
world, so how challenging is it really?
Yeah, now I've never done it. So from the actor's seat, I don't know, except that yes, everything I worked on, because it's Fox, and it was Bento, and there's Bento LA and Bento Atlanta, and Tubi is obviously, so we were hearing voiceover tapes from all over the country. And many people have pro setups at home. And that was one of the things we'd ask, like, should you book? Could you go into Atlanta, LA, or New York, or do you have a pro home studio, and what is it? So yeah, essentially you could live
Like,
anywhere.
did that make a difference? Like, if somebody didn't have a pro studio, then it's like, why
If
cast
they were
them?
near a major city. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, even I remember, even on some of those, like, even if they weren't LA, Atlanta, or New York, couldn't get into one of those, a professional recording studio in one of those cities, the team rented some space. Like, I remember, like, Houston or some. There was an actor here or there that there was an actor who was British who had relationships with the team, and she went into a studio in London. Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah. Like, for me, that's like, I mean, I guess film and TV, this is what it really comes down to, is that, but I mean, I like that you said it. It's just like, it really comes down to levels, which is just the fundamentals of acting, like a good audition scene. But I'm like, I feel more confident with a film and TV audition scene, because I know these things, I can do this. I know it will make the audition better. When it comes to VO, I'm like, I don't really, maybe it's making it better. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I like the, sometimes keeping it keep just back to the basics
Mhm.
is like really all you need
Just try
sometimes.
really good storytelling, and you're gonna be right or not, or you're gonna be able to adjust if they give you a note or not, or they're gonna hear an old person and dismiss you pretty quickly, or not. And not that any of us that do this a lot couldn't, when asked, like, "Yeah, make him younger, Jesse."
Right.
But they probably have heard five that are already in
That's the
that are
thing.
fine.
Like,
You just have to kind of know, like, I got to give it my best shot and do the detective work and tell a story, and I'm gonna either book it or intrigue them enough to get asked to do some adjustments. Or um, another one I worked on, which I'd never been through this. We didn't, on the three features I'm talking about, we didn't have any callbacks for those, or in person, like work sessions where we zoomed in with the actor or gave them notes while they were at a mic. I did do another project where we had callbacks for roles, and they were on Zoom, and and the director and the team was on Zoom. So I was watching someone at a mic in their home studio get direction on animation, um, which was fascinating.
yeah.
And interestingly, then it came down to some of the things that TV and film auditions come down to: personality and vibe and niceness or assholery. honestly, then it, because we did spend time with them in the room, it was, yeah, did they take that note, and did they act, did they vocally make the shifts everyone was requesting? But also, if we're going to be in a studio with them 3 to 4 times over several hours, directing them in person, how are they as a person?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think you said something interesting too about the if you gave somebody the note, they probably could have done it, but realistically, 5 other people probably already did it that way. And like, I think that's the thing that's so challenging. And as actors, we need to anticipate the note, because of self tapes, because like with this VO thing, you could like literally get anyone from around the world. Like
Yeah.
someone has probably guessed correctly, even though there's probably a ton of actors that if you just told them the note, like
Totally.
they would be able to nail it.
Yeah.
And like, so how do you think as actors we can anticipate the note a little bit better?
That is so hard because I don't know that you can, because you never know what note's going to come at you based on what. I've seen in callbacks. We just went through callbacks together for something I was working on, and I saw several people read for the same thing. 20, 25-minute callback chunks, and given someone's natural approach or their choices, will inspire one note, and then the next person that walks in the room may inspire. Now, yes, sometimes I see the same note being given over and over again when I know that director is trying to achieve a certain thing of storytelling, and I'll hear the same note a few times. And it'll be interesting if someone just comes in and, yes, naturally nails it, if they just inherently got it. But I don't know about the idea of anticipating a note, or how you would work that way.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that, like, I feel like a lot of, like, what are notes that usually come up? Like, the pace, we kind of talked about pacing with theater,
yes,
so, like, maybe speed up the pace.
Yeah, the biggest notes I hear the most often in TV and film callbacks are: pick up the pace, take out the air, act on the line, not in the pauses, and up the stakes, and or really fight for what you want.
Man, I mean, you said them so fast, but all of those are so good. You're right.
They're the basics. And I know when I was acting on set and when I would be in callbacks, I would often be told, I think because of a theater background of taking my time and, earn the pause. Pause only when it's earned. Really move through it. Really,
How do you earn a pause?
You chart out what brings you to need to stop, or you chart out why you would be going at a certain point and what makes you put on the brakes. I'll see a lot of actors, young actors or actors who haven't gotten a lot of good direction over the years, or will really indulge in highly emotional scenes and and just put in a great amount of air and show us on their face and body what they're going through and thinking. And in life, we mostly do that
We
as we
hide it,
speak.
but we also hide that
Yes,
stuff.
or we
Yeah.
cover, but we don't spend a lot of time across from someone in huge gaps, just just really physically going through the roller coaster of what we're feeling. We tell them, or we walk away.
Yeah. Get Scene Studios was founded in helping connect actors with industry pros. We bring in the top Southeast agents and casting directors to really help you get seen by the people that matter. And we really focus this on 2 different ways, everyone. In one of our signature in-person classes or workshops called the Get Seen 360, you get to have a self-tape evaluated, then you get to work on the callback, and then you also work on a cold read. You spend 5 hours with an industry pro in the Get Seen 360. And then for our online class, and this signature workshop we have is called the Perfect Submission. And this mimics the Actors Access submission process, where you send in a headshot, a self-tape, and a demo reel or clip. And so this is an incredible way to really get feedback on what that submission is looking like. And so everyone, as a thank you for listening, every single month we're going to choose one winner, and you get to choose one of these classes. Any class that you want will be absolutely free, and this will be our way of saying thank you so much. So all you got to do is head to the pinned comment below, put in your name and email, and you will be entered to win. All you got to do is put in your email one time, and you will live there forever, which means if you submit this month, you could win 3 months from now, 4 months from now. So go ahead and head to that pinned comment now, and good luck.
Yeah. And so I will see a lot of actors just, and I call that like sort of the antidote. The note is like, put the work on the line. Figure out how to do what you're doing through the text and not in these huge gaps.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I'll say, don't beat the audience over the head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everything can't be precious.
Right.
Things do get thrown away.
Yep.
And every time I look at a scene or work with anyone, I'm like, what is important and what is parenthetical? What is maybe bold or italicized, and then what is just thrown away? Because in life we have sides, we mumble, everything's not precious.
Exactly.
And I think that is a challenge for some theater actors who've come from a lot of poetic writing or heightened realism or really beautiful beautiful playwriting, to get a scene about vampires or to get a scene about, a heist or a
Totally.
and then treat everything like it's Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And no, so yeah, what are the hottest points in the scene, and what is the framework that gets you up to that? But not everything is precious.
Exactly. I remember you were doing a class with us, and one of the things that you were kind of going through in life at that time was adopting.
Yeah.
And it was so nice and so sweet to learn that about you, and kind of I felt like at a very special time I happened to be with you, like really kind of hearing about it and learning about it. And so I'd love to know how that I'll call it an adventure, how that adventure in your life has shifted you and shaped you.
Yeah, it was a 2.5-year roller coaster, unlike anything I'd ever gone through in my life. My husband and I started this journey and never know where it was going to take us, and it took us to the lowest lows and the highest highs. A year into our journey, we matched with a young woman in Louisiana for a 4-month match, and we got to know her, supported her, went out to visit her and her boys. We're there for the birth of a little girl, and we parented the little girl in an Airbnb for a week. And 7 hours before the mother's window of termination of rights was up, we got a text that she had changed her mind and she needed the baby back.
Wow.
And so there, my husband and I are in New Orleans, handing a child that we thought was ours and that we'd introduced to the entire family. And community, because we'd been very active on social media about adoption, because we were trying to get connected any way we could
Yeah.
to a mother who would want her child to be with us. So everyone knew. And this little girl had been named, and we'd had a shower and a pink nursery at home. And there we are within an hour span of being dads to this most beautiful child and loving every second of it, to leaving a lawyer's office with a car full of baby things and literally a baby smell still and no baby.
Oh my
And it was
God.
the worst. It was the worst chapter of my life. But what was amazing is, I think when things like that happen to a couple or an individual, it can either drive a huge wedge between you and as a pair, and because you're both grieving differently or handle it differently, or it can bring you together even stronger. And for my husband and I, Chad and I, instantly came together over it, were there for each other. And when that happened, we were on, within an hour, we're like, we cannot go back to Atlanta where this nursery is waiting for us and all of these people who thought we're coming back with a child. We booked a beach house in Seacrest, Florida, and mourned for a week, and together got through it. And that was hugging and eating tons of seafood and walking on the beach and just crying and figuring out next steps. And so fast forward, we matched again a year later. On the day my son was born, we matched with his mother from her labor bed in Philadelphia, and we got a text. Hey, a mother has chosen you. Can you meet her on the phone for an hour, and can you drive to Philadelphia tonight? And so it was then the opposite.
Yeah, and I think that's
when I met you.
Yeah, I was like, I think I remember you. I'm like, what are you doing this weekend, or something like that? And you're like, going to Philly to adopt you. And I was like, what?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's the most amazing thing in the world. And he felt like my child from the minute I got that text and started seeing videos of him. But to get to the bigger point of how it really changed me, and I have heard this from a lot of people I've talked to who are parents, though a lot of people would not say this about me or recognize it from the outside looking in, but I spent a good amount of my adult life as a worrier and living in my head and replaying. I'd go to something like this, and I'd go home and replay every single bit of it and say, why'd you say that? Or regret, oh, you sounded unintelligent, or I was very self-critical. And when I would be in things, or people would say you were great, or I'd get some great review, I didn't always believe it. And I would just there was a lot of talk in my head and a lot of noise of just second guessing and some regret. And the instant I had a child, there became very little room for that in my head anymore, because I have a life to take care of, to feed and to change and to hug and to kiss and to educate and to drive around the city to dance or soccer or tumbling. This morning at 9 a.m. was tumbling. And so it actually, then when I do have my pocket of work and my time carved out to cast or to teach or whatever, I'm hyper-focused now, and I get more done, and I'm more efficient, and I'm less risk-averse. I'm just like, let's try it. Or I'll cast that thing for you in 2 weeks for 35 rolls. Let's do it. It somehow got me out of my head, because I have this being to take care of now who depends on me and my husband for so much, that it really, I'm less, strangely, less stressed out and less of an anxious person. Though a lot of people would have never said that about me, but I was on the inside than I was before I had a child.
Wow. I mean, I think such a beautiful story, and I knew to a certain degree what you had gone through first.
Yeah.
But I'm sure so much that when you look back now, you appreciate it, and your gratitude is at some other level, having gone through the tough thing first.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we thought we would be. You don't. There are people, I think, that want to be parents or are parents accidentally, who it is very hard for. And we know there are horror stories of people who just should not be parents, or who the stress of children can be very, very destructive. But we had a hunch we might be okay at it or good at it and love it. And I just had no idea how much I would love it. And with him, my husband, Chad, how we would work together. And it has just been nothing I have done and ever will do could come close to the joy of fatherhood. My current, like this week, and it's just started this week, he gets up around 7 and he immediately goes out into the living room all sleepy and finds my husband and crawls into his arms for a long, long hug. And I'm still in bed, and I'll hear this. He comes rushing into our room. He turns on all the lights and he opens the blinds and he screams, "I missed you, Daddy. It's my turn for a hug. It's your turn for a hug, Daddy." And he crawls into bed and it's my turn.
Best alarm clock ever.
Oh my God. And the other day he said to me, "I like it here." And I was like, "You do?" He's like, "I like it here, Daddy." And I was like, "Griffin, I'm so glad you like it here." And he's very aware these days because he has 2 dads and he has friends that are having their moms are having their second child, and he sees pregnant women and he sees babies, and he's very aware that he's adopted and that he didn't come from our tummies.
Right.
And he's got a picture of his biological mom where he eats breakfast and he says hi to her in the mornings. And he's very aware that together we all, out of a great amount of love, decided the best thing for him would be to come live in Atlanta with his daddy and his dad and the community of people here who would lift him up. And we talk about that a lot.
I think that's important. And I think talking about that is long term is probably gonna serve him in a great way.
Yeah, we said from the beginning, we don't ever want to be dishonest with him or mislead him or trick him in any way that then later we have to go backpedal and be like, "Actually, you do have a mommy
Yeah.
and she lives over here." Yeah.
Well, I think this conversation has been so powerful and really ending in a beautiful way. But before we get to our ending, we do have to do our spotlight sign off,
Yeah.
Clifton. So the first question of 5 to end strong is, what's something you're super grateful for today?
It ties back to what we just were talking about, but I was thinking about this a lot lately with the political arena that we live in and the rolling back of rights that we see now, and this sort of othering of Americans, and this strong push to take rights away from women, LGBTQ Americans, that I am really grateful that I live in the era that I live in, and then I was born into the family I was born in. Back to that, I met a lot of Southern boys like me at college who did not grow up in the accepting families that I grew up in and had a really, really hard time. So I'm grateful that I grew up in the family I grew up in, and then in the era that I grew in that would allow me to then, like, in 2024, say the word husband and say, like, legally adopted son. As a child, like in South Georgia, I had no dreams or thoughts that I could ever marry a man and then have a family with him.
Right.
It was not, well, it wasn't legal then, obviously, but it was a sin, and it wasn't on my radar at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think I wake up grateful that, like, yeah, there are scary things going on in the world, but because of that, that love of my husband and my child and the family that we have, I'm just so grateful that I came about when I did, and into the family I was given.
That's awesome. And I just want to like bring attention to like what you just brought up, which is like, yeah, there's things going on that we could be upset about and be angry at, but then there's also things that have like such gratitude and come such a long way. And it's really comes down to, where do you put your attention?
Yeah.
We can put our attention on like the places of gratitude that you're in, and that thing that you're living a life that you could not have imagined.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, how incredible is that? Or we could keep our eyes and attention on like all the crap that's happening. And it's like, you really get to choose where you put your attention. And that is going to put you and guide the state that you're in and the life that you're living. And so it's like, choose wisely.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I could be posting tomorrow, like, what's Portugal look like these days? I want to move, but this is my home, and this is,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I know I'm going to stay here, and I want to make my life has been here, my career has been here, so yeah, focus on what you can do with what you have, and also, like, I'm really grateful that I have only since graduating and with degrees in this industry, I've only ever worked in this industry. And it's been
That,
multiple hats and sometimes three at a time. But I look around and I know how fortunate that is. And I know and every new job was an education in
yeah.
itself. And so like I know how lucky I am that I didn't have to, I've never done nothing wrong with being in food service or a barista or go do a corporate job for 5 years and then come back to it. Somehow I've been very lucky to be in a job in the industry since graduating college, and I do not take that for granted.
Huge accomplishment. Congrats.
Thank you.
The next question is, what is a film, TV show, book, or event that changed the trajectory of your life?
This one's easy. So my mom's a librarian, so I read just
Oh my
constantly.
gosh, we have
growing up.
lots of books. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like it was required. So
Yeah.
I was just a bookworm. But I read this book when I was in college and had not come out yet. It was E.M. Forster's Morris, and it's spelled Maurice, but the British pronunciation is Morris. And it was written in 1913 or 14, but it wasn't published until 1971 after he had died because it's about homosexuality and a homosexual protagonist. And so I read this book in college and then watched the 1987 Merchant Ivory film adaptation of it with Hugh Grant and um, uh, Rupert Graves, and gorgeous book and gorgeous film. But the reason that book changed my life, and then the gorgeous movie treatment of it was a story about a young man figuring out who he is from childhood on and knowing difference and otherness, and then falling and having crushes and falling in love and wanting to be with someone who ultimately can't be with him because he can't come to terms with his own self and he has to stay in the closet, but then meeting someone else who can meet him where he is. And that book has a happy ending. And it ends with two people in love. And that was so rare. And also it didn't occur to me until really reading it and seeing that film that that life could be that happy.
Mm.
And so E.M. Forster's Morris. It's set in Edwardian England, but it just reminded me. I was like, oh, people like me have been around since the dawn of time.
Right. Yeah.
And and also I think so much of what I learned growing up and so much of what people who are anti-gay or who have a lot of bigotry or biases, they immediately think of the sex first. I mean, they think that it is about having sex with somebody else. And anyone knows that relationships and love and life, that's just a small part.
Small part, totally.
And that's what's so great about that book is, there are sensual scenes and but it's more about someone wanting a spiritual relationship, a connection with someone to spend his life with, someone to make plans with, go trips with. And that's when I realized, like, oh, the whole package is what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And at that time too, when that movie was made in the late 80s, and there was so much doom and gloom being made about gay characters were dying, or the sidekick, or there was it was the AIDS era, and so there was when that movie came out in 87, it was so wonderful to see a happy ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
What is something within your routine that you really cherish? I mean, it sounds like your awesome alarm clock is definitely one.
My child.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm just gonna go back to books. And actually lately, like so many, I have a really strange relationship with social media, and I love it and can go in the rabbit holes too and get really distracted. And then I also need time where I'm like, I have to put this away because it feels competitive. I'm seeing like, people who are way more attractive or fit than I am, and it makes me feel bad, and I want to be fit and all these things. And so I have to take time away. And so I make a routine of I always have 3 or 4 books like in rotation because my mom's librarian,
Yeah.
is just setting aside time to read. And
You do that in the morning or in the
I
evening?
do it late at night.
Late at night, yeah.
My husband goes to bed before me, and I will sometimes just, from like 10 to 11, 3 or 4 days a week, I will read my books and just say, I'm not turning this thing back. I'm not pulling this phone out again.
Right.
I will even go put it in the bedroom and put it on its charger so that I'm not tempted.
Smart.
Because books have, really, and in the darker moments of my life, or loneliness, or New York, when there was so much anxiety swirling in the air, and before I met my husband, books had always been my salvation and calming mechanism. I can really be like going through things and having a lot on my mind, and instantly open a book and be in that world. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I go back and forth. It's funny. I feel like I always ask this question to see if there's like things like routines I can steal from people because I don't have a routine. Like I'm always like changing it up, and yeah, sometimes I'll read in the evening, and then, but for some reason it doesn't feel like it's like reading doesn't feel like relax. It is relaxing, but for some reason I don't know. I think I would like want to be inspired. So then I'm like, well, if I read the book, then I'm going to be inspired. Then I'm really not going to sleep. I don't know, but I don't know. You describing that, I'm like, maybe I need to go back.
But
to some books.
I cannot do e-readers.
No,
my husband reads only electronic books, and
Candy used to say that, and then I got her a Kindle, and now she's like, no, I got to do the Kindle.
I think it's because I grew up in a household full of books.
Yeah,
I always was visiting my mom at her library. I mean, this was back in the card catalog days.
Right.
It was like not a digital card catalog.
Yeah.
A catalog drawer.
You put it in the front.
Totally.
You remember? Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so I still want a physical book, and I'm really big on used bookstores. And then when I finish something that I've held on to books that I know I would like to reread one day that are my like.
Do you have like a little library at your house?
Yeah. And then I'm regularly going through things where I'm like, I probably don't ever want to read that one again, and I'll take it to a bookstore to sell it to get credit for something else.
Do you have like a reading chair?
I do.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like only reading goes down in this chair.
I mean, my child sits in it, and
well, yeah, you can't,
but like,
you can't
but
stop
I
the-
sit
you
in that
can't-
chair to read.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
I feel like maybe that would help. I don't know. In this area down here, I think we're going to turn that into like a little library.
Yeah.
I think Candy wants it to be more of a library than me, but I don't know what else it would be. So I guess happy wife, happy life.
My grandmother was like that too. And I think she probably inspired my mom to love books and then become a librarian. But my grandmother passed at 94, and she always had 3 or 4. She was really into romance novels, which was interesting. Like really, really kind of, smutty. Yeah.
That's what
I mean,
Candace
she read
that's what
other
Candace reads.
she read other things too,
Yeah.
but like she would, and I'm like, she's 94, and she's like, good for her.
Yeah.
But she read till the day she died.
Wow.
And I hope I can too.
You will.
Thank you.
You will. All right. 4th question. What is something you're currently trying to improve in your life right now? What's something you're working on?
It's a great one. Trying to be present. And I'm really working on, because there is so much noise, and there's so many things on my to-do list, from personal, parenting to career, that I'm trying very hard when I'm in front of someone, or like when I visited you on set, or when I have someone go have coffee with someone, or run into somebody I know at an event or something, is to actually put all that other stuff in. I like to think of like my brain and sometimes of like little lock boxes, to like put that stuff in a back lock box and close it.
Yeah.
And just sit with like, Jesse is the person in front of me right now. Jesse is the most important person in my life right now. And the thing that is the most important thing that I'm doing right now is talking to Jesse. And that can be 5 minutes, and if it turns into 30, the world will go on, and those emails will be there, and I can, unless I'm really running late for something, it can all get done. and it doesn't have to all get done immediately, and to really value who's right in front of me.
That's powerful. I love that. I mean, well, you just got almost an hour of practice in right now.
You know.
So good job. All right, final question is, we've talked about a bunch of different things. I feel like we cover some really solid stuff too. So we might just bring something back that we've already talked about or something brand new, whatever you want. But if you wanted the listeners to get one thing, one big takeaway, what would you want them to get?
Gosh. I think I get asked a lot, like, just like if I could get one tip as a performer or a person in this business, like if you've done this for 20 years and haven't stopped and obviously haven't gotten burned out, like how do I rise above all the noise and all those tapes?
Yeah.
And it's a simple sentence for me, and it's been said by a lot of different people, but I know one person who said it a lot in interviews with Steve Martin. He said, "Be so good they cannot ignore you." And to me, that means being so prepared with the material and so conscious of your journey and the industry at large and the team that you're reading for, the project, how your own technique and like how you prepare and present. And while it still might not go your way because of a tone thing or a team member voting for somebody else, or that you can leave those auditions or those interviews or those situations 100% happy with yourself because you did all the work. And if they chose somebody else, you're not going home regretting. I think like the jobs I've had over the years and the sort of ambition, and I think ambition's not a bad thing. Putting myself in paths and creating work for myself, or asking to meet with this person or that for an interview or an internship or an opportunity, but then backing it up with passion and prep and really, really hard work. Like every time I've gone into a situation, whether it's cast 35 roles in 2 weeks or that internship early at Jodie Feldman at the Alliance, it was, how do I make myself indispensable to them? How do I anticipate what they need, handle it very quickly, kindly, and joyfully, and then it's very hard for them to let you go or not give you a promotion because, so it's how do you be so good they can't ignore you. And then when you get the opportunity to be indispensable.
I love that. And I think when people have heard that quote before, at least for me, you're like, you think of it only on a talent level. And I loved how you described it, because it's like, yeah, it's so much more than that. So it's when it's like, be so good they can't ignore you, it's not just about talent. It's, in preparation, how you conduct yourself, how you show up, the energy you bring, the attitude that you have, all of that stuff. And I think that gives me and anyone listening a lot of power to induce change in them to like be that good.
Yeah. And at the level of like getting called back, the talent is going to be, we could cast these projects multiple times. So there will be plenty of people who will be so good they can't be ignored, talent wise and technique wise and familiarity with that script and that character. It's it often, when there are multiple choices there in front of you who could do it really well in different universes of this project, it is the other stuff as well. How fast do they work? How kind are they in the room? How do they communicate about their stuff and their work? How are they with this star who's been pre-cast, who's right there acting with them? And what's that chemistry like? And or, how are they just sort of talk about the industry or all kinds of things, because we could cast a lot of things more than once.
Right.
And so it is, to me, be good is beyond just be talented technique wise. It's craft a career.
It's be good in like, just be good, just be good.
Yeah. And also like you and I've talked about this off on the side about things, but like, I think there's so many people doing what we do that if if you reach a point, I feel, when you're jaded about it and you're pissed off about it all the time and you're bitching about it all the time, whether on social media or over drinks, and it's just a struggle, find a way to go around that and find the joy in it, or go do something else. Honestly.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, there's just no, we've been in projects, or I've been on projects where there's that one toxic person or person who didn't reveal that initially and then gets there, and then all that sort of comes out, and it can really, really, really be death to a project and or just a morale, and for those around who want to be there and who love what they do. And so, to those, I say, find a way to love it, find a new spark, or move on.
100% agree. And then everyone else, be good.
Be so good they can't ignore you.
Yep, so simple. Clifton, thank you so much for being here. It was an ultimate pleasure to be speaking with you and just focus on you and give you all my attention. And I know that I got the same back from you. So
Thank you. I wasn't thinking about anything else in my life.
Nothing.
Yeah, so goal accomplished.
It was great. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for being
Jesse.
here. Everyone, thank you for watching. If you're still here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, even comment and review. Let us know how you feel about this show and how it's impacting your journey. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you guys on the next one.